All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating lecture by Ryuho Okawa, delivered in Hokkaido on June 24th, 1990, titled The Power of Belief. This isn't just your standard self-help talk. We're talking about a deep intersection of sharp social critique and profound religious philosophy. We're going to objectively break down how it challenged the whole paradigm of Japanese society at the time and really get into what the word belief actually means in this context. So, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at challenging common sense. Then, Japan's global mission. Third, becoming happiness producers. Fourth, the true definition of belief. And finally, the call to action. Let's get right to it. Section 1. Challenging common sense. Overcoming historical norms. Now, the location of this speech, Hokkaido, in northern Japan, is absolutely crucial. Historically, there was this accepted common sense that Japanese culture and business prosperity always flowed from west to east. But the speaker poses a really bold challenge here. He essentially says, hey, just because the past was like that doesn't mean the future has to be. He's urging the audience to ignite a fire of truth right there in the cool, harmonious north of Hokkaido, literally overturning historical norms. He then introduces this massive, fundamental paradox that humanity faces. We have this dual mission, right? On one hand, we're driven to relentlessly pursue endless evolution and societal development. But on the other hand, we have to maintain deep, inner spiritual harmony in our daily lives. These two things, endless progress and peaceful harmony, often seem totally opposed to each other. But the mission is to somehow combine them, to build a true utopia by progressing while staying completely spiritually balanced. Moving on to Section 2, Japan's global mission and the world's thirst for meaning. Here, we get a super dramatic anecdote. The speaker talks about the president of Iranian Broadcasting, who apparently read a short, translated pamphlet about these teachings and traveled all the way to a Tokyo office. At that time, people in Iran who had been dealing with war and disaster were desperately asking, how can humans actually be happy? They were looking for answers. And this story really highlights that the world was looking to Japan for something much deeper than just an economic success story. At the time, Japan had become this absolute economic powerhouse, but the speaker is highly critical of just throwing money around through financial aid and loans. He argues that the world doesn't just want to know how Japan got rich, they want to know how to live after getting rich. What does a happy life look like? He's pushing the idea that Japan shouldn't just export money, it needs to provide a working spiritual model of true human happiness, a real utopian example. Listen to this number, 5.2 billion. Any guesses what that was? That was the entire global population back in 1990. The speaker makes this staggering claim that Japan holds a responsibility for the spiritual well-being of all 5.2 billion people on Earth. He's telling the audience that when a country reaches its economic peak, it suddenly shoulders this colossal, world-guiding responsibility. Section 3. Becoming happiness producers, shifting from passive to active. To solve this global crisis, we have to change our behavior. The speaker uses the metaphor of baby crows, just passively waiting with their beaks wide open, wanting to be loved, wanting to be given things. He contrasts that selfish waiting for love with the act of giving love. True happiness, he argues, isn't about receiving. It's about being an active source of unconditional love. When you freely give love without expecting a reward, you tap into an endless, infinite source of energy. He goes on to describe the modern world as a place overflowing with spiritual patients, people desperate for love and meaning. Well, if everyone is a patient and there's only one doctor, the world can't be saved, right? So he argues that we desperately need countless doctors of the soul. We need active producers of happiness who can learn, practice, and ultimately heal others, rather than just passively waiting to be healed. So how exactly do you become one of these happiness producers? He lays out a really specific 6-step pathway. First, you know the teachings exist. Second, you read them. Third, you understand them mentally. Fourth, you digest them. You really internalize them into your own life. Fifth, you rejoice in that realization. And finally, step 6, you convey it to others. Only by completing all these steps do you transform into an active producer of happiness. Section 4, the true definition of belief, moving beyond success formulas. Now we get to the actual title of the lecture. In Japanese, the word for believe is made of 2 characters. Let's deconstruct the first one, shin, or to believe. The speaker totally strips this of any worldly self-help vibes. It's not about believing you'll get rich or get a promotion. It's about completely throwing away personal ego and small desires and accepting a divine or higher ideal with an absolutely pure heart. So, the crucial point is the second character, nen, meaning thought or focus. Once you've pure-heartedly accepted that massive higher ideal, nen is the act of concentrating literally all of your spiritual and mental energy, your talents, and your actions into a single point to manifest that ideal into reality. It's an intense, undivided focus of your entire being. He uses this incredibly vivid imagery to describe what happens when you combine those two. When you accept the ideal without a shred of doubt and focus all your energy, it creates a torrent of light. It's an unstoppable force. He says it's like a raging river of light that simply washes away all earthly obstacles, rocks, landslides, whatever's in your way. That is the true power of belief. Finally, Section 5, the call to action and spreading the bouquets of truth. The scale of his immediate goal here is honestly staggering. He tells the audience that the target for that year is distributing 15 million bouquets of truth across Japan. And by bouquets, he means books, tapes, and magazines containing these teachings. He's passionately pushing to get 10 million more of these into people's hands in just the remaining 6 months of that year. As he wraps up, he gives his final concrete directives to the Hokkaido audience. He says, "Do not let this knowledge stay as mere theory. Take immediate, concrete action." He's urging them to physically transform into producers of happiness right then and there. The goal, to be the physical ignition point that fills the entire nation and eventually the world with light. So, what does this all mean for us today? While we're just objectively unpacking the philosophy of this 1990 speech and not endorsing any specific religious movement, it does leave us with a really fascinating philosophical question. When a nation reaches the absolute peak of economic prosperity, what responsibility does it actually hold for the emotional and spiritual well-being of the rest of the world? It's a huge question, right? Something to really think about. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in the next explainer.